Well, welcome everyone. We've just had a couple of connection issues, but while Jane connects back to the audio, welcome to the school's presentation of the project Trees of Hope and the Forest of Imagination. So if I haven't met you before, my name is Penny Hay. I'm Reader in Creative Teaching and Learning and Research Fellow at Bath University, co-founder of the Forest of Imagination with Andrew Grant, and Director of Research for a charity, the House of Imagination, which is devoted to researching children and young people's creativity. So welcome, Jane and Chris. Would you like to introduce yourself? Shall we go to Chris first while Jane connects?
Hi, I'm Chris Chorley. I'm head teacher of St Vigar St John Church School, and we've been had a relationship with the Forest of Imagination and School Without Walls for the last 3-4 years, something like that.
Thanks, Chris. And Jane?
And hi, I'm Jane Rochester-Smith, and I'm head teacher at St Andrew's Church School in Bath, and I've worked with Penny for over 20 years, I think it is now, but through School Without Walls, 5x5, and also Forest of Imagination over the years.
Fantastic. It's really a pleasure to work with both of you. And we'll be joined soon by Denise Rowe, who's one of the artists that has been working with us. Denise and her partner Kennedy set up the Trees of Hope project in Zimbabwe. And we've been working with 3 schools in this area, including Ralph Allen Secondary School, Anya Miles Centre Apologies, and also through the British Council Connected Classrooms project, hopefully we'll be connecting with 3 schools in Zimbabwe very soon. So we're going to start with a film. So allow me to share my screen. So this is a film that Denise and Kennedy made for the project. It's such a beautiful film, isn't it? It's just full of hope and joy. We'll be joined hopefully soon by Denise to talk more about that. But I'm just going to go now to the PowerPoint presentation and take you through the story of the Trees of Hope working alongside Forest of Imagination, and some case studies from Chris and Jane's school, and including Anya's. Even though she's not here, I'll speak on her behalf, hopefully. So hope this works. So yes, so as I said, we've been working with Denise Rowe and Kennedy Chinyere, and Kennedy grew up in Zimbabwe, and it was his brainchild really to think about in the community in his village to grow a forest of hope, to grow trees of hope, and to engage the community in that process. So children, adults, artists, elders, everybody. And together with colleagues from Bath University and Nick Clough, Jane Tarr, Amanda Bailey, we've been working very much as a team and focusing in on the artistic reconnections with land. So it's part of a longer term project that Amanda's leading, which is around kind of nature culture and listening to the land. So without going into too much detail at this point, it's very much about kind of pedagogy. It's about teaching and learning and finding new approaches for engaging children, young people, adults in a way of working together that is co-designed and co-created, but based on kind of eco-creative pedagogy. So thinking about ecological approaches and environmental justice. And Jane Tarr also, Jane Tarr and Nick Clough have got a long-standing relationship with Zimbabwe. So Jane made a small embroidered cloth and poem to explore the experience of immersion in nature that linked to the video that we've just shared with you. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now. So Chris, as I said, is the head teacher of St Vigra and St John Church School in Chippercompton. So over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so what you can see here are the 4 cornerstones of St Vigra's and St John's School. These are the things that we aspire to. They're also our values, and they are how we try to kind of live our life, and we try and deliver our curriculum through the lens of these 4 aspirations, if you like. So particularly because of COVID and the return to school, we wanted to do a reconnection, a focus on being connected. So you can see at the bottom right-hand corner that one of our cornerstones is being connected. So we were very interested in reconnecting the children to school, but also what that meant in terms of reconnecting to the area surrounding us. We're very lucky. We live and go to school in a really beautiful corner of the Mendips, and so the nature aspect of the video you've just seen, we used that basically as a starting point. I was very interested in using that as a starting point to start stimulating children's ideas and creating a piece of work surrounding that. So the class teacher took it. We did it in year 3. And you can see here that was one of the starting points, was really to ask ourselves just what nature meant. What is it? Where is it? Why is it important? Is it important? We did a lot of teasing out as to what we thought was being said in the video. We didn't lead anything. It's a completely open-ended experience for the children. It's completely, you take this where you want it to go. It did become, the school has quite a strong ethical strain, if you like, running through it, and so the children are very passionate about looking after the environment. So one of the ways the children took it was in the route of it's our responsibility to look after nature. And again, we didn't direct anything, but that was one avenue that they kind of explored and followed. They absolutely kind of could see what was coming out of the video in terms of expressing our connection with the nature and how important it was. And so, as primary school children want to do, they wanted to copy that. They wanted to emulate it. They wanted to do it in their own setting. They were inspired to do a piece of work by it, but they also wanted to use the mediums to go off and do other things. There's a picture here. One of the really interesting things that children did was they wanted to take pictures and photos of the nature that we have. We have our own forest joined onto school. We're surrounded by fields. We've got a lovely outdoor area, and we use the outdoors for our learning an awful lot. So the children had the opportunity to go off and explore and notice things. A real key thing that came out of it was the children took used digital media. They took films and they took photographs that you can see here. But when they came back, they felt very passionate about then reimagining those or redelivering them using their own art. So they wanted to paint those pictures, and they wanted to recreate what they'd captured in a slightly different way. And as it says here, we did not lead this at all. It was a completely spontaneous approach and decision by the children, but it was a really, really positive and productive one. And it was interesting that they then were able to compare what they captured on digitally and what they produced, and maybe why. And we had some of those discussions about how you can capture the real thing, but then your own drawing, your own picture involves part of you and is a personal thing as opposed to a factual thing. The children did look at the fact that what the video had was a dance and some music and some pictures, or for them video. So they broke it down very quickly into that this did not come from us at all, but they very quickly broke down that it was dance, that it was filming, that it was music. So and they went off into these strands. So we did some music, they composed some music. I'm very lucky because the class teacher is a music specialist, and so she actually played them some pieces of music and discussed the inspiration behind them. And the children went off and kind of listened to the music and thought about how it had been structured. They thought about the music in the video and what was being reflected there, and then they kind of recreated their own nature pieces of nature-based music, if you like. Some of them are pretty primitive. That it's year 3 children, but they absolutely did connect to rhythm and if nature creates a beat, but that's actually all you need in music, or it's the most important thing in music, is to replicate the beat that there is in nature. So they were very, very good at listening and observing and trying to pick out significant parts in either the music that was presented to them, the music they saw, the music they thought was being, or the message they thought was being portrayed in the video, and what they wanted to say about nature that surrounded them. And I'm always saying the outcome. You can hear there. the outcomes are our primary outcomes, but it's not about that. It's about the process and the discussion that sits around those outcomes. And I'm very clear about, and it's massively valuable discussion that sits around what those pieces of work, what go into those pieces of work. So it was a really, really positive experience. The children, we basically had we dedicated the first week to this. It was a kind of reawakening and reconnecting for the children with the school and their surroundings. And they importantly, I think, it's their ability to articulate why it was important to do that for them. So I think by the end of the week, they would be able to say to you, what we did, we saw, Miss White showed us this video, because that's how it started. They were always able to track back to the very beginning, but the outcomes, what the children were talking about at the end, wasn't really anything meant to do with the stimulus. It was to do with their locality, their setting. We did arrive at a point where it became about saving nature. And again, it was nothing to do with us leading it. It was them saying, this is our environment. It's very precious to us. And for me, as certainly as a head teacher, one of the things they did was then apply other things that they'd learned. And they did go, at the end of the week, they did go down this avenue of, we know all of this stuff about our world and what we have to do to protect it, and that it's our job to protect it. So that ended up being quite a key theme for them. It wasn't our intention to do that. We just let it go the way the children naturally took it. But that was kind of a final outcome. And certainly if you talk to them right now about that first week, about that experience, they fully understood the being connected. We were back at school. We're lucky to have these areas. We appreciate these areas. We know these things exist in these areas. This is why these areas are special to us. We could talk to you about the wildlife, the name of some of the plants and this kind of thing. But the key thing for them was we have to look after our planet. And that's where they took it. And yeah, it was a really, really successful experience and a really, really formative experience for the class teacher to be able to work in a kind of free and creative way. So I was really grateful that we had the opportunity and that we had the access to the stimulus, because it was a fantastic way to start a return to school.
That's brilliant, Chris. Thank you. Sorry, I have static on my machine again. So I'm sorry that we had some random beautiful bird sounds and grass sounds. And welcome to Denise. So Denise, we'll come back to you in a minute. But while I've got the PowerPoint up, I think we'll carry on with Jane's part, and then I'll come off the PowerPoint and we'll have a discussion about Trees of Hope, Denise. So welcome to the party. So Jane, as I've said, Jane's the head teacher of St Andrew's Church School in Bath, and Chris and Jane and Anya from Ralph Allen have been working with us on Trees of Hope and the relationship with Forest of Imagination. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Penny. So we, like Chris, a lot of it parallels really with Chris's story, but the children had come back in September, and the project couldn't have been any better timed really in terms of the reconnection and allowing children to explore and being back together and building those relationships back with each other and with their environment. So as Chris was saying about that connection and joining back together again, we've recreated our curriculum, which was launched fully launched in September. And the first term is very much around me and my relationships, how you fit within your community and how you grow together. And we're very lucky as a school to be positioned pretty much in the centre of the city of Bath. So we have everything on our doorstep within walking distance. And within the school has a wonderful central courtyard, which has a walnut tree, which has become sort of the emblem of our school, which grows and the children grow with the tree. So we linked the walnut tree with the children watching Denise's video. and we allowed them to explore movement and dance and just enjoy the feeling of being within that space while they were watching the video. The year 2 class, which you see now in the photo, we came back in from lockdown, and they were with their class teacher. And before the summer holidays, they started looking at life cycles and the idea of growing and growing together, and to use that as a provocation to allow them to think about what it's like to migrate from being in year 1 to travelling through into year 2. And they became butterflies, and a symbol of that was them creating messages and dancing and movement around the walnut tree. They also wrote messages on leaves, which they put and attached to the walnut tree, of what they felt about nature and how nature made them feel. And these are still up in the tree now, and they're going to add this seasonally. They're going to add to the tree about how their feelings have changed over the year. So it's become a very exciting piece of work that all the community can see within the school. So I think that very much it's an anchor. It's a place where we go to for peace and tranquility, to sit round, and it's a place where they can see nature changing over the year. So the tree very much changes with the seasons. The other class worked very much on the movement side of the film. So we showed it to them several times. They just kept saying again, because they wanted to watch over and over again Denise's movements. And then there was some beautiful intuitive movement by the children, which hopefully Penny can play for you. So just a short snippet, but it was a lovely and just natural movement which they just did in the classroom, and then we could see the movements also coming out in their play as well. So that's been a lovely provocation, and they're going to carry on that movement as well in their PE lessons and imagining and being different things, being trees, and this has followed on throughout the time in the class really. With it, I think what it's done is it's just created that feeling of how they can express themselves in different ways. So very much they've listened to the music and they've responded, but it's opened the children's eyes into ways that they can express their feelings around nature, but also how they connect with it, and very much a sort of multi-sensory expression of their feeling. So, we're really excited about how that work's going to develop over time.
Thank you, Jane. That's brilliant. And actually, having said that, Denise, rather than to and fro between PowerPoints, I'll just honour Anya's work at Ralph Allen. So as a local secondary school, the school, as a kind of mission statement for the project, wanted to be listening and to be a responsive school with relationships at the heart, welcoming everybody and creating that sense of belonging. They want to develop respect, resilience and resourcefulness, challenging and stretching each individual in a supportive way. And I know the school well, and I know they do live out that ethos. So they have a fantastic outdoor classroom. They're opposite the Rainbow Woods National Trust space. An ex-student, Fergus Filden, has designed some ecological buildings, and they work in eco teams, and they've also got a new farm with students interacting with the animals daily. It is really a joy to visit. And Anya led a year 7 group responding to Denise and Kennedy's film, and the young people watched the video and then engaged in a class discussion. Very interesting to look at the relationship between the kind of dialogue between primary and secondary students and their connection to nature. And obviously with the Forest of Imagination, Anya and her students have been involved in the forest, as Chris and Jane's children and families have. They were very aware of the kind of issues around climate change. They were very aware of their own connection to nature and the importance of nature in their lives. And recorded their ideas in all sorts of ways around the school, but also inside and outside. And the conversation with the students was very much about a time they felt connected to nature. Let's see if this works.
So I would like you to think about a memory that you have when you felt connected with nature. Hands up. Delilah.
Well, I felt connected with nature when I lived in Costa Rica and when I went surfing, because it made me feel very free and just like with like the waves, and it made me feel really nice.
Amazing, fantastic, thank you. Arthur?
It makes me feel connected to nature when like chickens break out, and it makes them look more natural, and it's just a sight to see, and it's beautiful in a way. Then we need to put them back in. So
Yeah, so that's the experience you have with your own chickens when you've seen them let loose and escape. Yeah, that's an amazing story. Anybody else like to share? Yes, lovely.
I was once in a park and saw loads of squirrels, and one was sitting on a tree trunk. I thought it was really cute, and I got quite close to it.
Oh wow, so you were able to get really close with the animal without it moving. That's a really lovely story, thank you. Did you have your hand up as well, yes?
Yeah, I always feel really connected with nature whenever I'm outside, like in the woods, taking my dog for a walk or in a field or something.
Lovely. I think there's something really special about woods, actually. I always feel that's a really lovely place with nature. Thank you, Jake.
Well, once I went to like the woods, and there was this log of a coin shoved in it, but it was like bent, and it was like, because once I was like a soldier and he was like in those woods, and then he like found the log and then he shoved a coin in it, and like when people like tried to pull it out, and it's still there when I saw it. Yeah, and then one time there was this like poor, like really, it was like really poor, and he was like homeless, and he was like a little boy, and then he like jumped over it and made the wish, and his wish came true.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So you saw this log in real life that was connected with this kind of historical story. Amazing. So you see how nature's kind of been there and stayed there throughout this whole time, this whole history. Amazing. Anybody else? Yes?
I once saw a rainbow, but in a complete circle, and I just felt amazed, really.
Amazing. I'd be amazed. I've never seen that. So a rainbow was a whole circle. That's incredible. Anyone else? Yes?
I just like generally feel with nature, like when I'm just kind of walking around where there's like woods or any type of animal, because it just makes me feel that like we're in like their zone and we've got to respect everything, because we're in like their house.
I'm going to pause it there because I'm struggling a little with the sound, so I'm going to put that off. So I hope that wasn't too interfering, but thank you, Anya, for interviewing your students very carefully and in such a positive way. So this is my chance to bring in Denise and your experience of working with Kennedy, Denise. So I know you weren't able to be here at the beginning, but just tell us a little bit about your beautiful film that was shared as a provocation. We watched it right at the beginning, so people have seen it, but just tell us a little bit about the Trees of Hope and the work that you've been doing with Kennedy.
Hi, hope you can hear me okay. I'm kind of juttering in and out of. Okay, great. So the Trees of Hope project is a project we started last year in Zimbabwe, which is where Kennedy is from. And it's really about honouring and supporting the connection between people and nature as an interconnected web rather than as separate things that we try and bring together. And having the trees as really pivotal in that, but also having the way that people come together through music and dance and creativity and song and story as also really pivotal in the way that we can live in a good way as human beings, and we can live in a good way in relationship with the land, and the trees as almost like modelling that for us. So Kennedy and I have been building that project in Zimbabwe and bringing in links in the UK, and we're really keen to be working cross-generationally and creating spaces for dialogue between generations and really bringing this work into schools. So it's been into schools and to young people in general. So it's just been such a delight to create that little video, which was based on music from Zimbabwe, from that village. And then my work, which is about connecting to the land where I am, and to be able to have so many young people witness that and respond to that just feels utterly delightful and heartwarming, and exactly what we're about. Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. That's brilliant. And I should have said, to honour the fact that you and Kennedy have worked with us alongside the Forest of Imagination team for a few years now, and also you have that beautiful film is on our website as part of Virtual Forest. But I think what became clear talking to Chris and Jane and Anya was as a kind of creative provocation, that first invitation to respond to the film, especially because it was at the beginning of term, it was very much around, as Jane and Chris have said, around kind of reconnection and that connection with the land. And we framed it around artistic listening to the land, but actually, and these principles are at the heart of Forest of Imagination, you know, it's about our deep connection as human beings in nature. You know, we are part of nature, we are connected to nature. So I was going to open up the discussion and invite the audience. We've got people watching online, on Zoom and on YouTube. I apologise for the tech issues. I have terrible static today. I don't know what's going on. It must be the weather. Maybe it's because it's Friday. But yeah, so just to say, I'm not sure whether you could hear the sound, but when we edit the film, we'll send it back out again, so it's fine. But can I just come back maybe as a discussion with the three of you and invite questions from the audience as well? If you'd like to put questions in the Q&A box, that's probably easier than the chat box, because then everybody can see those who are online. But I'm going to start with the first question. So the first question is to Jane and Chris, really, which is, you know, in terms of especially now, and especially kind of mid-pandemic, and your experiences of children returning to school and having such a joyful invitation for creative learning as that first kind of set of relationships that you're building again with children and families. Could you just both comment on that from your point of view? You touched on it in your presentations, but just to expand on that. So maybe Jane first.
I think with it, Penny, I think as we know, the space that you are with, that you engage with, is as important as the relationships you build with each other, I feel, in school. And it's you know, we've spent a lot of time researching the environment and ensuring that that's, you know, as important as the actual things you plan for the children. So I feel that having that provocation, allowing, like Chris said, allowing children just to explore and express in as many different languages as they want to has been key, really. And I think it's really around allowing children time to observe and to really think about and notice change. And I think by doing that and by recognising with the children, having that dialogue and recognising with the children how you manage change and how you notice it through observation and through how you link with that with your feelings and your emotions has been key, really. I do feel it's important to give that time. So like Chris said, he didn't overly plan it, he allowed that to develop and that to grow. And for me, that's key. You start with a provocation, you allow that to grow and allow the children to explore and to develop that over time. So it, you know, to me, if you notice and you make time to actually just sit and look and see what's happening, like Denise said, how you respond and how you connect with nature is, you know, makes you appreciate. And it's so important now, even more with all of our concerns around climate change.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. Chris, what about you in terms of the principles that kind of underpin why you do what you do, really?
Yeah, well, I think it's about time. There's always this, you know, in the work, certainly in the work I've done with you, Penny, there's this thing, it feels like a luxury, but you get back what you put in, and schools are so built around push as many subjects through cram as much in the 6 hours you've got. You know, time's crucial, isn't it? You spend 1 minute longer on the playground than you're supposed to, you're in trouble. So there's this the system pushes against actually, and to say to a practitioner, what's really important to me is that I have these opportunities to practitioners to say, right, I want you to spend the week with this video, and they go, what? Well, how am I going to fill this day? And actually, you don't fill the day. It's not about filling the day. The kids, the children, it's having the confidence and the belief that children will lead it. If you've got a good provocation and you've got the confidence to allow things to blossom, and it can be a scary place for teachers, because you can go an hour into this or 3 hours into this and go, they haven't produced anything, I haven't got any evidence. The quality of the talk was probably the best quality of talk any class got on the first day back at school. I wouldn't doubt that for a second, by miles. But there's a nervousness about that, and you have to be committed to it, and you have to believe in it. And you know, I think Jane mentioned it and said for us, it was the perfect. It did just fall into my lap. It was the perfect thing. You couldn't have created, if you'd gone out and created something for children to come back to school with, you couldn't have done a better job. And so it was just so right for the moment. I think you could do what we did any time of the year, pandemic or no pandemic, and it would still have wonderful, wonderful outcomes. There was this just particularly prescient thing about reconnecting, that it was natural. It was all very, very natural, and the children worked very hard. I think that's the key thing. You have to get yourself to the position where you can look back on it and reflect on it and say, what did children compose? They made huge choices. They had philosophical discussions. They wrote. They chose to write. They chose to be creative. They chose to paint. They used ICT. If I'd probably written down a list for teachers and said, by the end of the first week back, I want you to have done some ICT, some music, and done some outdoor learning, done some poetry, done some writing, they'd have gone, oh, what are you doing? You're trying to kill us, do all of that in 1 week. And yet, just with one provocation and the space to say, take it where you want to take it, you get it anyway. And so for me, as an opportunity to give that to a teacher to do, and it was fantastic. And, you know, I wish the teacher was here, because she had a really enriching, meaningful time doing it. And I think that's what's really important. And I haven't even mentioned well-being, you know, which is surrounded all of it.
Please just mention well-being, Chris, now, but and then I'll come back to Denise. But it is so important, and for those of you so Jane and Chris and I had a discussion yesterday about the importance of creativity, nature, well-being, care, compassion in all of our lives, especially now, with the reconnection. I prefer the reconnection curriculum phrase rather than recovery, and I certainly don't like the notion of a catch-up curriculum, because I think it's a deficit model. But yeah, Chris, say about well-being, because I think for adults and children in this project is so important.
Yeah, well, I just think it goes back to time. It goes back to allowing time to say, you've come back to school, you've come back to this setting. What does that actually mean to all of us? And let's just take a bit of time to appreciate it and remember it and recognise it and investigate it and learn from it. But that's just, it's a no-brainer that's good. That was good for children's well-being upon a potentially anxious return to school. I mean, I did it with children who had not been in, those year threes had not been in school since the end of March. None of them, not one of them had been back in the building. And so the whole week was built around, what do we have here at St Barbara and St John? What do we have outside? The amount of time children spent outside, and just that, and that's scientifically proven good for your well-being, isn't it? They did not enter school and then sit down in a classroom and four walls. We immediately said, right, being back to school is way more than these four walls, isn't it? Let's go out there and explore it and experience it and appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, it was a very positive experience for the children.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, no, really, really well said. And I think you've both touched on the notion of the importance of time, space and attention. As our charity, we were 5x5, we're now the House of Imagination. Our strapline is the freedom to follow your fascinations. And Chris, you alluded to the kind of notion of coverage in the curriculum. You know, I think my belief is that we can still have a structure, whether that's the national curriculum or a curriculum or a curriculum framework. But I think it's the spaces in between that are really important, and that you can travel through different disciplines, you can combine disciplines. And I think the phrase that comes, Jane, you used the phrase from Reggio Emilia, which is to give children the opportunity to express themselves in 100 languages, which brings me to Denise, because Denise, as an artist working alongside children, I think it's really important that, you know, as artists are role models, educators are role models, you know, working to kind of make visible those habits of mind of an artist. And this project is called Artistic Listening to the Land, and informs the wider project Listening to the Land, Nature Culture, whatever a shorthand. Amanda and Jane and Nick will be smiling. But do you want to say something about your role and Kennedy's role as an artist alongside the project, especially, you know, how the projects are connected?
I mean, what I'm really sitting here with, having just listened to Jane and Chris and you, Penny, as well, is this piece around time and space and attention. And what I'm with as an artist is that how, and for Kennedy as well, is like how the artistic practice develops is through that time and space and attention. And so then the provocation that gets offered to the school has arisen out of like a lifetime. You know, that's Kennedy's been playing Imbira since he was 4. I've been moving in nature since I was about 4. And so this, we get this little nugget, but it arises out of this lifetime of like commitment to being present within the artistic process. And my experience as an artist is that that commitment to being present within the artistic process is a commitment to be present within what is actually unfolding in the moment in life. Like, that's the place of the artist, is the place to listen and reflect back what we experience as what is unfolding now in this moment. And so listening to Chris and Jane speak about offering that then to the children and giving them the space for them to listen and then reflect back is like, what I'm really sitting with is the empowerment that gives, and the empowerment that I experience as an artist through being able to engage with my work, but the empowerment that gives to the young children when they're like given the freedom to find their interest and their passion and their response. And that's what's needed, because we're at this time when things are shifting, and we need the young people to be able to feel like they can follow their passion and their delight and their curiosity and what gets their attention, and to have that positive feedback that when they do that, then what they generate has got this potency around it. Is like creating a feedback loop that gives them more permission again in their lives to, you know, who knows, I'd love to know what happened when they went home and, you know, how it rippled on outside the classrooms.
Yeah, thank you. That's so important. And I think you may know that Sir Ken Robinson was our patron, and sadly he died recently. But he talked about finding your element. And I think that, you know, if you and Kennedy have been moving and playing Imbira since you were 4, and you've taken this through your adult lives, that learning is lifelong, but it's finding that intrinsic motivation to be curious, to be fascinated by particular modalities or different lines of inquiry. And I think that's what, you know, for me, that's what a values-based education system should be and is, and that's lived out in schools like the 3 in this project. I mean, coming back to Chris and Jane, do you want to just say, because Jane, you have a beautiful strapline for your school, and Chris, you have 4 fantastic cornerstones. Coming back to the kind of values that underpin why you do what you do, and why, because you're absolutely on board with these kinds of projects. and you can see their value. Could you say something more about that? Jane first, then Chris, or the other way around?
I'm just going to have to dip out, I think. I'm going to have to...
Oh no, Denise, you have to go. Do you want a final word?
Don't know if I have a final word now. I think
maybe just a word, maybe just something about Trees of Hope in terms of hope and action and climate change and going forward. So if you had to kind of sum up what's the reason that you're involved in our Listening to the Land project? What drives that kind of passion for you?
What drives it for me is I feel like the fundamental flaw in the way that this culture that we're living in is the idea that we're separate from the land, or we can be separated from the land. And actually what feels fundamentally important to me is that we understand that we are part of this living web of the land and part of our role. I mean, that's why it's so beautiful to hear Chris speak about the children coming where they ended up, was like, we've got to look after nature. It's like, I feel like that, yeah, that's our role. That's a big part of our role, is to tend and take care of the land that we are lucky enough to be gifted to be able to live in partnership with, and to be able to celebrate and honour that and bring vitality to that and bring vitality to ourselves and each other, so that we can do that tending in a good way. Yeah.
How beautiful. Yes, we're very committed to environmental justice, and obviously the notion of young people, young people as environmental stewards and guardians of creativity. I think all of those trustee words come to play. But Denise, I know you've got to go to another project, but thank you so much for joining us. Give our love to Kennedy, and we'll share the film with you.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you all.
Thanks, Denise. And I'll come back to Jane and Chris around the notion of values.
Do you want me to start, Chris, or you?
Yeah, I'm still thinking.
You're still thinking. I think for us, it's, I mean, Denise has said a lot about that connection. And I think for us, it's the values are, you know, for children to understand about their place in the world and how vital that is, but also how we respect them as unique individuals and their place they have within our community. But I think for me it's about joy, and if you can instill that sense of joy in learning into children, in how you give them that time and space and how you inspire them to want to find out more, and that curiosity and inquisitiveness you want to see carry on. I mean, I was very fortunate to be an early years teacher and to have worked in nurseries and reception classes for many years, and to see that sort of spark and that absolute awe and wonder when they notice and they inquire into something is wonderful. And when I became head teacher, my biggest passion was how do you allow that to continue and just ensure that when children leave your school that they still have that absolute joy of learning and inquisitive nature, that when they go to secondary school they feel empowered and feel curious and they feel they just want to be lifelong learners. So to me it's keeping that joy and that love of learning.
Beautiful, Jane. And Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think my journey started because I was passionate about making sure that disadvantaged children didn't miss some of this stuff, because there is a gap. That's really where it started, but I'm not still in that place. You know, it has grown for me, and I'm now in a different setting, and the driver is you do need to we do have a role making it clear to children, because children, that is you know, we have a responsibility surely to be as values based children as anything else, don't we? And you can just knowledge in their brain, but if it's not underpinned or attached to some values, it's a little bit meaningless, and they don't know what to do with it either, and we shouldn't expect them to, because they're just kids, especially in primary education. So it's it's things of it's certainly my view on things in that respect has definitely expanded as my own personal journey has gone on, and it definitely started in a place of trying to make up the deficit for certain children. That was absolutely my drive. It isn't that just that anymore. It's everybody needs it, and you can see the value for all children actually, and also frankly that education is better done that way. That's a bit of a statement, but that, you know, I just believe that.
Wonderful. And I think absolutely, no, I'm totally with you. And I think because obviously Chris and Jane, we worked together on School Without Walls, which is in its 10th year. And obviously the wonderful Sue East, who sadly died, who was your previous head teacher, she used to talk in School Without Walls. I think it applies to this project. She used to talk about the 4 hours being different. So or actually was it 5 hours? So it was all about relationships, and it was all about research, and it was all about respect and reciprocity and reflection. And I think you can carry on with those. And I know that at Balfour University, we've redesigned our PGCE. So we've put actually the 5 C's at the heart, 4 C's. I'm trying to fight for the 5th being climate. But yes, around, you know, creativity, critical thinking, compassion, care, collaboration, whichever one you choose. And obviously, especially in response to the climate crisis, I think it's absolutely important that education is about that social, cognitive and environmental justice, that everybody has access, no matter what their background or circumstance, to a really democratic creative education. And I'm wondering here in the space of, you know, October 2020, whether the digital divide has presented a problem for you. I mean, this is Bath Digital Festival after all, and I wonder, you know, the film was communicated to you via digital means. You have yourselves met Denise and Kennedy in the past, but, you know, they weren't able to visit the school in that sense. But we've managed to, Forest of Imagination, for instance, has pivoted to a digital platform since May, which has been an incredible baton passing between artists over the time. But what was there a time at any point where you felt that some children were excluded because of the digital, or have you managed to work around that?
Yeah, I personally, I mean, it has exposed certain divide or certain differences, I'd like to say, that we didn't necessarily know were there. I also think, in terms of the digital divide, it's not what I'm finding interesting at the moment is it can be an assumption to do with the hardware or your access to being online, but it's actually much deeper than that, because you can be a very affluent family with all kinds of things, but if you're doing the wrong stuff with the things, you're not. It's actually to do with behaviours, and so it's shown us a lot about that. I would say yes, it has exposed. It wasn't not so much with the project as you kind of controlling it in school to a degree. But yes, it has totally. It's revealed stuff to us. We now know some things that we didn't know before.
Thank you. And what about you, Jane?
Yeah, I think similar to Chris, really. I think yes, you know, there is the how you ensure the equality, especially in terms of ensuring that the children have access to that connections, especially when we were in lockdown. But it's the balance, isn't it? You know, ensuring that they've got those relationship building skills, but also time to be together. And I think when we did the feedback from children about what they missed, it was when we were in lockdown, it was very much about the relationships. It was about being together and having that contact with the teachers and with the adults around them was one of the key things, really. So it's how you recreate that and how you ensure that even, you know, the communication carries on, but it's meaningful. So you can have the virtual conversations, but are they on the right platform, and are they meaningful for everyone?
No, that's a good answer. And yes, thank you. I think also importantly, going forward, the 100 languages, the different ways that we express our ideas, the different ways children can explore different media, and of course the digital space is a whole new world. And I think we've been exploring with Bath Cultural Education Partnership, we've been exploring the the interface between the digital and the analog. We've been working on these beautiful creative adventure boxes, unboxed, and we've now got a wonderful new digital intern through Bath Spa University. And because we were lucky to receive some emergency funding from the Arts Council, so we devoted 10% of our budgets with the Egg, Bath Festivals of Holborn, Mentoring Perth, working with the university. And we've designed with Lucy Cassidy and James Baldwin, two artists, these beautiful gifts, if you like. And I think all the time the conversation has been around not only those families most in need, but also how then to have these journeys through the imagination in digital and analog form. So very interesting. So I'm conscious of the time, everyone, and I just wanted to end with sort of last words from everyone. So just before, so obviously I mentioned earlier that Jane and Chris and I, with Anya, with Jane and Amanda, Nick, and the other co-researchers in the group, we are also, so we've put in a bid to the British Council for Connected Classrooms, hopefully to work with schools in Zimbabwe, depending what happens with COVID, but obviously, we've clearly working in a digital space at the moment. And going forward, Amanda's leading on an Arts Humanities Research Council bid, which is about listening to the land and bringing together the work in the UK with Forest of Imagination, with Zimbabwe. But we've also got not only the Trees of Hope project, but we've got partners in South Africa. I know, Chris, you particularly keen on that link, and we've got partners in Sweden and Norway as well. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. But I think, going forward, what's kind of keeping your hope in frame, Jane and Chris? Maybe a last word?
Just enjoy taking opportunities and take opportunities, and in every situation, I don't know, it sounds cheesy, doesn't it? But in every weird situation, there's probably a good opportunity, and you just have to take them. I feel so. We're in a strange time at the moment, and you can just kind of go, this can't happen, but somewhere there'll be an opportunity, and it's at times like this that creativity really comes through, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Creativity in a crisis. I couldn't have said it better. And Jane?
I think just to echo Chris, but also I think we've got to really focus on things that can happen and possibilities, but also to see the positive in even the small things that we're doing. So think about what we've achieved, and to also really embrace that, and just think about the wonderful things that we can just do with what we've got already, but also equally just look outside and see what opportunities are there.
Absolutely. And I think Trees of Hope and Forest of Imagination are both projects that have nature and creativity at their heart. And these opportunities, like today, for a conversation about the importance of nature and how it's, certainly for me, it's been a real lifeline over lockdown. So on behalf of everyone, it's 5:01, and just to say thank you very much, Jane and Chris. Thank you to Denise, who's gone, and Kennedy. Thank you to Anya for your contribution to the PowerPoint as well, and to the rest of the research team. So we'll be in touch. Big thank you to Becky from the Bath Digital Festival. Apologies for the tech issues. I'll go on a course. But thanks, everyone. Have a lovely Friday.
Thank you, Penny.
Have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.